Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the cabin. We're going to go down here and talk about this little mini hut that we're getting ready to build that's going to house all of the equipment for the solar power up here at the homestead. Well, in the last video I was working on that hole over there, which I got it dug out 14 inches around, 16 inches deep. I want the other 4 holes to be at least that from the ground level. Now we're going to be about 6 inches high on the high point, which I'm thinking that's probably that far one over there as well. This back one back here will be our tallest pier that we'll be building on, but once we get that done, then we can actually start raising the building. Now we had a lot of really great comments that came through on what style, when I asked that question last video, would you like to see on this build right here. We got comments like the outhouse, some of them like the chicken house, a lot of them like the workshop down there. You know, what has been your favorite build? But honestly, I'd kind of like to have maybe something a little different. So if you've got any ideas and you hadn't made a comment, or you've thought of one since then, be sure and leave them down in the comment section below, because like I said, this is just getting prepped for the foundation. You can stick anything on top of it. I do have some lumber stacked up right here. In that last video I brought this log up from down there and I've got it on my mill. I've got 10 12-foot 2x6s right here and some miscellaneous lumber stacked in here. So I've got a pretty good head start already on building materials for whatever it is that I decide to put here. Now we also need a name for it, okay? We've got different pet names for things around here. If you could think of a good name for this mini hut that's going to house all of the power equipment, be sure and leave us a comment about that as well. So once we get, I've got a tree on the mill ready to go to saw up some more lumber, and I think I've got 2 logs, maybe 3 logs left down there. One of them is a great big huge one that we fell last year. It's a pine. I'm going to try to get it cut up though to finish the workshop, because once I can get the solar put in, then I need to finish on trying to cover up the workshop so that things don't get wet if it was to rain or something like that. I've still got the front solar array that we're going to have to put together so it's ready to accept the panels. Now the reason I haven't put any on there is we're still waiting on the hardware that holds them down basically. But I just got word that there's probably going to be some heavy equipment coming our way, because my daughter may be getting ready to start clearing the property down there, so I'm going to have to kind of shake loose from time to time on what I'm doing up here so that I can be down there and help to get a lot of the logging so that they don't burn too many trees, you know, that are good logs. Get to do some of the logging down there and find a place to stack them so that we will have them to be able to build all of her sheds and miscellaneous outdoor houses that she might need for whatever reason. And the area around me is getting a whole lot thicker. I can tell you, when I first moved up here and started clearing this area to build this cabin and cut this area out right here, all along the perimeter, things are just growing wild. Now I'll tell you, you have to manage timber, because what it will do is you'll have trees that get so large and they have a big broad canopy that it chokes out and kills everything underneath it, or it's stunted, you know, and it never grows to be what it could be. So by going out and select cutting and opening up some of that canopy, it allows everything underneath that to grow up. And I'll tell you what, these trees, I'm going to have to cut them down, because they were just small saplings when I first started clearing this area, but now that the sun can get in there to them, bam, they just shot right up. So you have to be able to manage your property, otherwise, you know, it can be like you know, when you get too many animals in one area, how they can starve to death. So kind of the same principle. But anyway, be good stewards of the property and do select cut, and then everything else will take care of itself, and nature will be sure and pay you back. Now I've told this story before, and I told one on the last video. I had some people comment about me telling the story about the dog that was hooked up to the telephone company ground rod outside and back on the party lines when the it rang to ground, when the phone would ring to ground, how the dog on the metal chain would bark and raise Cain when her phone would ring. She says he always knows when somebody's calling me. That's a true story. But anyway, I thought I would tell you another one. So I had a service order for someone who lived way outside the city limits, right? So I go out there and I can't find the address anywhere. And it was a custom that, you know, we would spend a little bit of time looking, and if we couldn't find it, we would turn it back for better directions. It would cycle through the system again, come out about 2 weeks later with written directions, turn by turn, on how to get there. So I was just getting ready to go and make the call to do that, and I was driving back and I seen this grass standing up with, looked like the end of a mailbox sticking out. So I just pulled up there and I took my hand and I pulled the grass back, and it was the address I was looking for. Lo and behold. Well, I happened to look up. I was kind of like the road was down here, then there was a hay field, and then you could see a small hill where the woods started up, and there was smoke. Not a big cloud of smoke, but there was smoke coming out of the woods. So I drove up there, and the house that used to be there, and I had never been there before, had burned. So anyway, I started out and I happened to look in my rearview mirror, and here's this little fella in overalls waving his hands like this, right? Stop, stop. So I stopped, and he said, "You here to put my telephone in?" And I said, "Well, it doesn't look like you're going to need one, and I'm sorry to see that happen." He goes, "Oh no." He said, "I've got a lean-to built up here in the woods. That's where you're going to put the phone in." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, let me check and see if I've got dial tone here at the house." I checked. I didn't have any dial tone. I went down to the road. I had it down there, so it must have melted the wire somewhere. Anyway, to make a long story short, I tried to locate, and I found it, and to dig up and run up the dial tone up to the place. And there was this little shack, like he said, built up there in the woods. And it was just plain old rough cut sawmill lumber, right? Kind of shiplap, like I've got the workshop down there, or lap siding. And then on top it was just like some old barn tin, and then had like a screen door like I've got here that just opens and closes, and on the inside it had some plastic tacked up on the inside of the boards there, I guess to keep any draft out or anything like that, with just a dirt floor. And he says, I said, "Well, you know, I can't really put service in a place like this because there's no place to ground. You know, I would have to get you to sign a waiver, and I would drive a ground rod here, but I'm supposed to bond to power. You know, that's the rules today." Anyway, so he says, "I'll sign anything." So I got him to sign the paper, finally got the dial tone there, and it called to have a jack put in. Now this place wasn't very big, right? It was only probably maybe about 12 by 8, something like that. And he goes, "Well, I'm going to be putting my bed right here, so I'd like to have you to put the jack in right here." I said, "Well, you could save that money if you want to." I think back then it was like $30 to have a jack put in. I said, "You could just run the cord underneath the bottom board from the interface out there and plug your phone right into that." He goes, "No, I want the jack over here." Okay. So I said, "Well, let me run over here to the truck. I'll get my drill, and then we'll poke the wire through there, and I'll tie the jack on, and we'll be done with it." He goes, "You don't need the drill." He goes, "Stand back." He pulls a 38 out of his pocket. He goes, "Where do you want the hole?" I said, "Right there." He goes, boom, like that. And I looked and I said, "I don't think it made it through." He goes, "Stand back." Boom. I went and looked, and that one went through. So we ran the wire through there, tied the jack down and all that. Anyway, I said that to say this. When I got done and I was packing up everything and got ready to leave, he said, "Don't leave." He said, "I got something I want to give you." So he ran up in the woods, and as I'm packing up all my equipment, here he comes back, and he had a 2-quart jar of moonshine that he gave me. Now since then, I've got 2 of the smaller ones, okay, with some of that because something happened to the big jar, right? But that little moonshine still is sitting in there. I bought from him just prior to him going and getting that liquor and bringing it back down to me. Because he said, "I make these and sell them." And I said, "Well, that's really cute." I said, "I'm building a new house, and I said, I'd like to have that sitting on my hearth." He said, "Well, I guarantee it'll work." And he said, "If that little copper pot there ever starts to leak," he goes, "just rub you some ketchup on it, because as the heat builds, that ketchup will turn really gummy and hard," and he said, "it'll stop the leak." Y'all know who I'm talking about? I'm talking about Popcorn Sutton. And if you have never heard of that name, look him up on YouTube, because you can find Popcorn Sutton, and I'll tell you what, he was a legendary moonshiner in these hills right here, western North Carolina, East Tennessee, northern Georgia, and so forth. Yeah. Anyway, a lot of things happen that's been centered around the phone company. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for stopping by. We certainly do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you back up here at the cabin again next time.